Hi, my name is Bryan Winter, and I am speaking on behalf of Secret Cow Level and Cabinet Entertainment about the Doomtrooper digital collectible card game. Why am I talking about this game? Because I'm the guy who originally designed it way back in the mid-90s. At the time, I was actually the most prolific collectible card game designer in the world, making games about things like James Bond and, The Crow and Splatterpunk and things like that. But my most popular game by far is Doomtrooper. Doomtrooper was printed in about 16 different languages. We beat Magic into a whole lot of countries, and it remained super popular for many, many years. Those of you in the States and some countries may not know exactly how popular Doomtrooper was, but in places like Poland, Italy, Sweden, Czech Republic, I'm sure I'm forgetting several. It was a very, very popular game. We designed about 5 or 6 different expansions for it. Some of them ended up being unprinted because of the CCG glut that was happening at the end of that whole era in the 90s. But at the time, it was quite a ride. And the folks at Cabinet Entertainment, who used to be called Target Games AB, the original owners of the Mutant Chronicles property, and Secret Cow Level, who is a bunch of guys basically who loved to play the game when they were a lot younger than they are now, than we all are now, decided that they really wanted to bring this game back, and so we all got together, we met, we chatted some more, and we decided to make this thing happen. And what I was brought in to do was basically to take a look at this game, rehash it, rethink it, come up with some of the fixes that I wanted to come up with over the 20-something years since it's been since this game was released. Modernize it a little bit and really take advantage of the new digital format, which I am personally extremely excited about. A lot of you may not know that there was a second edition of Doomtrooper, which was never printed in English and a lot of the other languages. Some of the later languages took advantage of second edition Doomtrooper, which did a lot of balancing, a lot of reworking of cards, a lot of changing of numbers, and a lot of that is in what you are going to be pledging for right now. So a little bit more background. Basically, if you don't know what the Mutant Chronicles is, it all started kind of with this role-playing game right here from Target Games AB. Here in the United States, depending on where you are, Heartbreaker Hobbies was the company that brought it over. Target had a lot of partners all over the world. And they had a lot of really cool supplements for all the various factions in the game. And today, you can still play it. A company called Modifius has a really cool big hardcover, beautiful new edition with lots of expansions and things like that. Okay, enough of the commercial for now. How did I get involved? At the time, Target and Pressman Games had a really awesome game called Mutant Chronicles Siege of the Citadel. Really great game, and I was actually brought in to sort of make a follow-up sequel sort of hobby game version, and that was called Fury of the Klansman. Apparently Target liked the work that I did on that, because when the collectible card game sort of genre became a thing, they came to me right away, and we worked through that. So I'm going to really quickly kind of go over what Doomtrooper is. I'm not going to tell you all the rules, but I'm going to kind of tell you what the cards are and how they interact. And then we're going to talk about some of the things that I've done working with the guys over at Secret Cow Level to sort of modernize the game, rejigger it a little bit, and turn it into something that I am personally very, very excited about. So let's go forward with that. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the cards. So in the game of Doomtrooper, you are basically each a warrior or sort of a commander in charge of a bunch of warriors. The warriors are part of various factions. So here are several warriors. Here are warriors from the Dark Legion faction. Here are warriors from the Capital faction, Bauhaus, Mishima, Cybertronic, the Mysterious Brotherhood. All these are various factions, and you can read a little bit about them. On the Kickstarter description. Each faction had a number of warriors, and you would bring your warriors out into play. Now, at the time, early on in the 90s, we wanted to kind of make sure that all the cards that you got were playable, so I came up with these various things where you organized your warriors. You could put sort of any ones you wanted to in play. You had a squad of good guys, a cohort of evil guys. And with this new version, we've eliminated all that. You have a squad, and we are limiting how you're able to bring cards into that. So if you're playing a certain faction, you can only bring some of those cards into play. but you're able to make many different kinds of decks, and it's really very freeing in that you're able to really take advantage of all the different cards and all the different factions, and this allowed me to inject much more personality into each one of these factions. So whereas before everything kind of the personality and the theme was really more in the art, now we're able to really put it into the mechanics as well. So you have in the Imperial Corporation, which is basically Great Britain and the United Kingdom, and a lot of Scots and Irish and all that kind of stuff, that whole area of Europe. They are very tough, very strong, very good with hand weapons and swords and things like that. They're raging and berserking, and but their numbers are very, their technology is not that great. As opposed to that, you have Bauhaus, which is sort of like the Germans, and they have great technology, but their fighters are a little weaker. Mishima, which is sort of the Japanese, of course, they have secret powers and things like that, and we're able to sort of inject all of those subtle differences into the game. You were able to give your warriors equipment, and equipment came in a couple of different varieties. You had guns, you had knives, you had extra, like things, just equipment like a first aid kit or a bomb. You also had equipment like vehicles and airships and things like that. You also had equipment, which was a whole different kind of card called a relic, which is sort of a super huge, powerful equipment. We're going to see how that changes a little bit in a second. You also had fortification cards. Now, fortifications were sort of the places around the Mutant Chronicles universe that were sort of giving you their influence. Some of the fortifications were actually things that were on the battlefield, like a foxhole. Other things were just the influence of a certain organization. For example, a citadel or a factory or something like that. So that needed to kind of change around a little bit too. Then you also had sort of not secret, but like special powers. The evil Dark Legion troops had dark symmetry abilities, which were these sort of evil powers. The good guy, the Brotherhood, which are sort of like these sort of, super clerics, they had the art, which are like magic spells that they could cast to the benefit of their allies and the detriment to the Dark Legion. And then you had key powers, which were the secret powers that the Mishima Corporation had, sort of inner strength and one with their bodies and their souls and their minds and things like that. The final kind of card were specials. We called them specials because they could do a little bit of everything. Some of them were battlefield effects. Some of them were conditions that you put onto a warrior. Some of them were things that affected the game or the other player. They had all the sort of the general pot of stuff that doesn't represent a thing in the game, but more an event or a condition or something like that. Now, when we sat down and looked at all of these cards, there's about 1,200 cards that were printed for Doomtrooper over the years, and figuring out, okay, which are the ones we're going to use in this first offering. And we came up with I think it's about 350 or 400 cards that will be in sort of set number one, or this introductory part. We wanted to make sure we had all the factions. We wanted to make sure that we got a little bit of everything. Those of you who know Doomtrooper will know that I'm not talking about things like missions and war zones. Those are coming, just not yet. Those are just more things that were in the game that we're sort of holding back and saving for the future. And the plans that we have been talking about are really very cool. So how did we kind of reorganize everything? We wanted to kind of take all of the things. There were so many different card types and so many different types of things, and they needed to be kind of reorganized. The warriors were obvious. Warriors are warriors. That doesn't change. But what affects them does. So instead of having equipment, which can range from everything from relics and vehicles and guns and weapons and first aid kits and just all this stuff, well, let's just kind of, some of that maybe we can divvy up into separate pools. So the first thing is that we took equipment, and we took the relics and we put relics into equipment. Those of you who have maybe played some card games or maybe familiar with the keyword mechanic. So if you have an equipment, which is the card type, a relic would be a keyword or a subset of the equipment. A blade or a firearm are other keywords on equipment, and that allows us to make special rules just for those types of things while keeping it nice and tidy under the equipment thing. Now notice I didn't talk about vehicles. Vehicles we actually pulled out of equipment, and those are a brand new card type called vehicles. Same thing with fortifications. Fortifications represent things that are on the battlefield and things that are not necessarily on the battlefield, but their influences in there. So we kind of pulled those into two different things. You have some fortifications which are actually sit on the battlefield, and vehicles which actually sit on the battlefield. And now, because of this digital technology, we are able to fairly easily come up with a mechanic that allows your warriors to enter the vehicles and enter the fortifications to get their benefits. Is you have to actually, and they will have a capacity of how many warriors will, can sit in this warthog, a dune buggy with a giant machine gun on it, or this, installation that is a foxhole or something like that. All of the things that are not, on the battlefield, those come into play as support cards. Fortifications, vehicles, all are under support, and some support is on the battlefield and some support is not. Now, you take a look at the art cards that that the Brotherhood can, the spells the Brotherhood can cast, the key powers of the Mishima Corporation, the dark symmetry evil powers of the Dark Legion. What's the word I kept using there? Powers. So those all sit under the power category. There's a power card, and then the keywords on those will make sure that those are divvied up by faction and by rule. The special cards are now called fate cards, and those also can be sort of taken out. So if I would used to be able to play, let's say, a special commendation on a warrior, that is actually no longer a fate card or a special card. It is now a condition card, which all falls under attachments. Attachments include special conditions that are played on warriors, yours or your opponents, and the equipment. Okay, so now we've taken all these different card types and we put them under 5 categories: warriors, attachments, which include equipment and conditions, support, which is fortifications, vehicles, and other things like that, and things that are on the battlefield, powers, which are assigned to warriors, special abilities, and fate, which are truly the events that change the battle as you go along. Now, one other big thing that we changed was, how do the warriors go onto the battlefield? One of the things that early on we decided to do was to try to make as many of your cards as usable as possible, as soon as possible. We wanted you to be able to open up a starter set and use all your cards. So what if you had good guy cards and evil guy cards in the same deck? How would you do that? So we created 2 sort of places to put your warriors: the squad, which is where your good guy warriors go, and the cohort, which is where your evil guy warriors go. And now with the way that the digital sort of delivery goes, we're able to sort of take all that away, and you just have your squad. Your squad has your warriors in it. And with deck building the way it is, and the way that we're able to control deck building, and because we can control how the cards are delivered to you, especially when you first get started, your squad is only going to feature the warriors from one faction. So if you are playing Imperial, you have Imperial warriors. If you are playing the Dark Legion, you are playing Dark Legion warriors in your squad, and you can't mix and match unless you have a card that lets you do that. So that is that makes adds a lot of simplicity to the game, but it doesn't take away any of the depth, if that makes any sense. So those are just a few of the things that we've been talking about. I've been going on for a little while now, so I'm going to kind of sit back and watch this Kickstarter go. As I am speaking right now, we are funded. Thank you very much. We've already gone through the first stretch goal, so which I believe is the crafting system for you to sort of turn your old, your unwanted cards into wanted cards, and there are lots more stretch goals to go. So thank you for listening. Please, put comments or questions, pose them either on the Kickstarter or in our Discord chatting area. The link to that is on the Kickstarter page, and we'll see you online. And thanks for all your support.